let's say you are someone who is just graduating from your MBA, or let's say you are someone who is transitioning from any other role to product management. A big question that's in your mind is how to prepare for those interviews. Look at our podcast to understand the different sections involved in a product management interview and how to answer them. And don't forget to subscribe to Everything Product. Welcome back to our podcast, Everything Product. In this channel, we talk about latest technologies with a product mindset. This is Phani. I'm a product manager at Intuit.
Hey everyone, this is Srinath. I'm the product operations manager working at Twilio.
Perfect. We have a very interesting topic that's needed for everyone, honestly, because we will be talking about how to prepare for product management interviews. Okay, Srinath, let me start with a simple question. Like I said, let's imagine someone who is just graduating. What do you think they should be doing to prepare for product management interviews?
Yeah, I was in that shoes as well a few years ago. So I would say a couple of things. One is deeply understanding the role, what that means. And second, understanding the different types of product management. There are various types of product management that exist in the world. For instance, technical product manager, non-technical product manager. So I would explore the different types of product management. In terms of understanding the role, read the job description in very detail and also discuss with maybe some of the product managers out there and through networking. You'll be able to learn a lot. So I would say these are the two things that you should look at when if you want to transition or explore this space. What do you think, Fanny?
Yep, 100%. The very first one you said, I think, was understanding the product management role, right? Totally. If someone has not done product management before, if you don't understand the role, there is a very good chance that you might not even like the role. So you should understand the role first. And like you said, go to LinkedIn, read all the job descriptions that you're seeing for your top companies. Or before that, probably like make a list of top companies that you're thinking about and understand what the roles are there. And you can also do networking. Like LinkedIn is one great website where you can find a lot of product managers who are like deeply rooted into the role. So probably reach out to them, set up like 30-minute calls just to understand what they do. And the second one you mentioned is understanding what the interview process is, right? Every company varies. So at least based on what I know, Google is very technical, or Facebook is slightly technical, but not as much as Google. Tesla is not at all technical. And Amazon is solely focused on behavioral questions, etc. So it changes a lot. Maybe let's deep dive a little bit into that, right? I know, Srinath, you're an ex-Amazonian. So how does a product management interview at Amazon happen?
Yeah, no. So in Amazon, as you earlier said, they focus a lot on behavioral interviewing plus the product design. So from behavioral interviewing, they primarily test a lot of the Amazon leadership principles out there. So it's very important you prepare your relevant life stories around those examples so you can communicate that during your interviews. So that's very important for product managers in Amazon. And the second, I think like in any other companies, I think product design probably is one of the most popular rounds for a product manager interview. That as well is very important in order to be successful. I'm sure there are other rounds, but you need to be really good at these two rounds, especially during Amazon interviews. And what about your experience? I know you have some great experience there as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe I'll start with Intuit, right? Intuit is a company very focused on design as well, because take any of our products like TurboTax, Credit Karma, or QuickBooks, etc., right? We are focused, we are building products for like millions of customers. So when you're building something like that, you need to build something very intuitive, which basically means you need to understand the customer very clearly and define the features that are like super relevant for them, and then launch it to millions of customers. So product design plays like a very crucial role in our interview process. And I've interviewed with few other companies as well. So let's take Google, right? Google's like first round of interviews start with like product design. Just uh, just they'll try to understand how you as a product manager trying to solve a problem. And they're also technical, at least from a product manager standpoint, right? They will be looking at probably like system design. How can you understand technically how a product is performing? I think one of the questions that I've seen somewhere is, let's say you're a product manager for Google Sheets, tell me how it works. So mainly they're trying to understand you as a product manager. Can you communicate with your engineering team to explain all the features that you need to build a product? And
Yeah.
I've heard of completely different angles as well. Let's take Tesla. Tesla is a company who doesn't do any kind of like design questions at all. They are basically a supply chain company who's building cars, or they are a technology company who's building cars. So they look at product managers who are probably data oriented. I've seen interviews where product managers are solely focused on like their SQL experiences and probably behavioral questions, where they deal with how to talk to like operations teams, how to talk to like different teams across different countries, and how do you manage all of that. So this is what I've seen.
That
Cool.
makes sense.
Let's deep dive a little bit more, right? So Srinath, now that we spoke a little bit about other companies, what do you think are the top sections that an interviewee has to think about while preparing for product management?
Yeah. This is something very important for any person who is looking to explore this area. I mean, I would say typically, I mean, there are four. That is strategy, product design, analytical, and behavioral. So these are the four rounds typically any product management interview have. I mean, irrespective of companies, I think most of the companies should have these four. I mean, what do you think? Is there anything I'm missing?
No, definitely these are the top four. Like you said earlier, right? Strategy and product design on the topmost. I think 90% of the companies would definitely do these. And there will be a hint of like either data and behavioral questions, depending on what type of role you're getting into. Let's say you're a technical product manager, it would vary a little bit. Growth product manager, vary a little bit, etc. And we discussed about different types of product managers in one of our previous podcasts as well, right? For anyone who didn't watch it, I'll add the link here. Please check it out. Cool.
Yep.
Let's deep dive on the first one that you said, right? Why do you think strategy interviews are important, and how do you think an interview should prepare for that?
Yeah. So strategy is all about, I mean, what you need to do in next like 3 to 5 years in order to be competitive in the market. Like, what are the different ways that you could do to reach there? An example of a strategy question is like if you were a company or like CEO, um, then what do you would do to reach from X to Y in next 3 to 5 years? So this is probably an sample strategy question. I mean, similar to that, there can be various other strategy questions. So strategy interview, you need to be very thoughtful. Do not be time bound on what you would like to achieve in next 3 to 5 years. I mean, what do you think, Funny? Do you want to add anything on that?
Yeah. So let's go back to like why strategy is important, right? As product managers, one of the biggest things that we deliver is creating that vision, strategy, and roadmap for the products. I know we talked about this as well in one of our old videos. I'll link that video as well. But
Yes.
that's an artifact that we as product managers deliver. And that's exactly what the interviewer is trying to test from a interviewee. So let's say if I like the very broad questions that you're talking about, right? Let's say you're a product manager for YouTube. Okay, what will you do? It's a very broad question. So they are trying to see, can you point to a specific customer and then understand their pain points and then think very broad on where it could go in the next 5 to 10 years. So in this question specifically, right, you need to have your creative juices flowing, and you need to try to understand like what is the customer journey, and you probably need to understand a lot more from the interviewer as well. because they might know a lot more about the product than you. So getting some of those thoughts to say where the company is going, what is the overall direction, will help you answer that question. What do you think?
No, definitely agree with you. I think we have to be very thoughtful and be open-minded because, I mean, there can be many other people, probably they are smarter than us when we are thinking about the problem that we are trying to solve. I mean, ultimately, what we are trying to do is working backward from the customer, working backward from what customer needs are, or working backward from the problem and how to get best, I mean, from where you are. I mean, you have to be really open minded, be a good listener to get there.
Yep. And I think interviewees also should focus a little bit on how do you plan to measure it, because one of the biggest items is defining the North Star metric for the product. So a strategy is something which aligns a lot to it. So like when you define your vision statement, you're basically telling, hey, this is how I see the product in the next 10 years. And you're basically also defining that metric, that North Star metric, to say, hey, this is how I'll probably think about the products and this is what I'll align towards. So if an interview can touch on those things, that's what the interviewer would be looking for.
Definitely. I mean, any product like probably feature is successful only when, I mean, they're able to create a difference. That's probably you can see mostly from metrics like option, that kind of stuff.
Yep. Cool. Let's jump into the next topic. Um, what do you think is a product design question, and what do you think an interviewer is expecting from that?
Yeah, probably this is one of the most popular rounds in any product management interviews, irrespective of companies. Uh, so, product basically the interviews are basically testing about your thought process on how you improve something. For instance, how would you improve Instagram experience and increase the users from X to Y? Something like this. So it's basically trying to understand how you think about the problem, how you do any prioritization, how you list out all the pain points, what are the features that you would build to improve that from X to Y. So this is how I would think from a product design interview standpoint. I mean, anything you want to add?
Yep. So let's start with an example, right? So the question basically is, pick any of the products that you like and how you would improve. And one of the prominent methods that I know of in the industry is the circles method. Let me
Yes.
probably take like a minute to explain what circles method, right? This is created by Lewis Lynn, one of the prominent persons who wrote multiple books about like product management interviews and stuff. And the circles method basically goes by this. First one is comprehend the situation. Second one is identify the customer. Third one is report the customer needs. Fourth is cut through prioritization. Fifth is list the solutions. E stands for evaluate trade-offs. And finally, summarize your recommendation. The reason this method is really useful is this helps you from clearly understanding what is the current situation of the product, then defining the needs of, then defining who is the customer, defining the needs of the customer. After you understand the needs, there could be like several of them. As a product manager, one of the prominent things that you do is prioritization. Then prioritizing those needs, then identifying list of solutions. Like you need to be super creative in like identifying these solutions, because you don't have to restrict yourself with the resources. It's an interview. So be as broad as possible, be as open as possible, and list the solutions. And once you list the solutions, there could be so many of them which could take like years and years to implement. So you would probably want to think about trade-offs on like doing one versus the other. And then finally, you talked a lot in this method. So comprehend the final recommendation and then say that, hey, this is what you think is the next step to do. This entire process basically helps the interviewer understand you as a product manager. Can you think about an end-to-end journey of a customer, define their needs and the solutions? So that's why this product design question is like very important in like product management interviews. What do you think?
No, definitely can't agree more. Probably circles method is one of the most popular frameworks that people use during interviews, and I did use that in a couple of my interviews in the past as well. It's very useful, as you explain in detail. I would highly recommend for folks who are exploring this space to definitely explore that. It will be really helpful during their interviews.
Yep. Actually, couple of things that I would add within circles method, right? So when you're trying to think about a customer, or when you're trying to think about like prioritization, there are several frameworks that are available. So for example, right, when you're thinking about a customer, try to define the entire customer person. So for example, a very simple example, let's say if I take Uber, what is Uber and what are their customers? Uber is probably a two-way marketplace. Basically, there are drivers and there are riders. So when you're thinking about the problem, try to pinpoint to one specific customer and probably go through the needs. Similarly,
Yes.
let's take a restaurant business. A restaurant business could have like multiple customers involved there, because let's say you're building a software for them, then you were probably thinking about the restaurant owner or the servers or the regular staff that you have in the restaurant, or you might have the suppliers, etc. So you can take multiple customer personas and then go through it. And then one of the other things that I would really recommend is a customer journey. So actually, before I go there, Srinath, do you want to high level talk about what is a customer journey, and then how does a customer, how do we explain all of those steps?
Yeah, in terms of a customer journey, essentially what you're saying is how would a customer use this product, and what are the different critical points that a customer may be in when the customer is using that product. So trying to understand that complete journey of the customer is really important in how you design a product. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, exactly. And one other thing that a interview should do is whiteboarding. If you're
Yes.
actually doing an interview in person, make sure to use the whiteboard that you have in the conference room. And let's say if you're doing a virtual interview, even if you could take anything, like it could be like a Google Doc, it could be a spreadsheet, or there are like several softwares nowadays, right? Like let's say Mural or Figma or anything like that. Pick any product and try to like draw it or like type it out within that, so that the interviewer can easily follow what you're trying to say. That's very important, because if you're talking a lot and if the interviewer is not following, that's going to be a big problem. And one
Yes.
thing I also want to add here is make it a conversation. You are basically talking to an interviewer who might have asked the same question some 100 times so far. When you're going into that situation, you don't want to be monotonous, and you don't want to just keep rambling because the other person might be bored. So whatever you do, just ask the question, hey, this what you're thinking? Or do you think I'm going in the right direction? Or if you think I'm going in the wrong direction, let me know, like we can change it. Or do you think this is the customer persona that you want me to take, or you want to take someone else? So that conversation will make sure that he's listening to what you're doing, and at the same time, he's also on the right direction in terms of your solutions.
Definitely. I think plus one to what all you said. In addition, I probably will add just one point there. Observing the body language of the interviewer, monitoring the expressions and all that stuff will probably, tell you if you probably are going in the right direction. Sometimes they may not interrupt you, but you need to be very clear on when you're talking to an interviewer, and based on the expressions of the interviewers, as I think you covered a bit. Try to ask clarifying questions if you think you may be going in a wrong direction. So, those are definitely all very important points during the interviews.
Yep. And another thing that I want to touch upon here is prioritization, right? So, very important to focus on prioritization, because product managers on a daily basis prioritize a lot of things. You could be getting requests from like 10 different stakeholders, but you are the one who takes a looks at take a look at all those requests and then says, hey, this is the final one that I want my team to work on. So there are different principles or like methods that you can follow there. A simple one that you can do is cost benefit analysis. Like what is the cost you would think is gonna uh, you're gonna have to build this feature versus what is the overall benefit that you could get. And if you could quantitatively tell that by any way, that's awesome. Even if you can't do that, a simple way to say that, hey, cost is lower, but the benefit is high. Even if you can do it that way in the interview, that's super helpful. What do you think?
No, definitely. I mean, as you said, there are multiple prioritization frameworks, and I think probably one of the popular ones you what you just covered is cost benefit analysis. I think similar to that, there are various other frameworks like RISE framework, which is probably very popular in the industry, as well as some like simple ones, like similar to what you just said, like customer impact versus effort. How much effort you would need to create a customer impact. Sometimes I mean, if effort is less, customer impact is more. I mean, it's easy to get justification and prioritize things. Yeah, I mean, totally agree with you. I think prioritization is one of the probably very important steps when people are trying to build features.
Awesome. Great discussion. Let's go to the next section then. So I think the other one that you mentioned is analytical, right? So tell me, why do you think that is important for product managers, and how was that? How is the interviewer gonna question you in terms of understanding it?
Yeah. So this is another important round. So analytical is basically how you are understanding and interpreting the data. I mean, this is very important as a product manager because when you're trying to understand the problem or what the customer needs are, you need to be able to really get a conclusion based on some data or interviews. I mean, probably interviews can be qualitative where you can get the feedback, but in order to understand, for instance, uh, like where is the exact user drop happening, in order to understand that you need to understand maybe the customer type or maybe geography. In order to do a lot of this kind of interpretation, you need to be highly analytical. And also when you define your product feature and when you're about to launch, you need to clearly know how you would measure product success. So for that, you need to clearly come up with the key success metrics for for you to call your product feature as a win. So overall, I would say being analytical is very important because it not only helps you to understand the problem from data, at the same time, how you would measure your product success once it's launched. So unless you understand how your product is performing, you may not be able to come up with additional opportunities that you may be able to uncover. Anything you want to add, Fanny?
Yeah. So let's take Facebook, right? I think Facebook calls one of their sections as product execution. So which is what they'll try to like measure here. So as a product manager, what would you do in general? So when we think about our roles, after you define the vision or after you define the strategy and after you define the roadmap, then one of the very bigger aspects that we do is execution. Like how do you work with your engineering teams to like build a product, analyze the data, launch the product, and then finally measure the success. And as part of this, they will be checking whether you're data centric or not. If you're not data centric, then you will be building some product without actually understanding the benefit of it or without actually understanding the risks involved for it. I think one of the questions that I know of is, let's say our customer traffic has suddenly dropped by 10% today. What would you do? And as a product manager, right? So I personally monitor my dashboards on a daily basis. Most of the days, my day literally starts by looking at a dashboard to say, hey, how did my product perform yesterday? So you should be able to like take that situation and understand all of the different things that could have caused that to drop. Again, goes back to like problem solving, where maybe there was something that's happening in that location, or maybe there is some issue with the system, or maybe a competitor has launched a product, etc. So you need to think about all those things to pin down to where the problem is, and then finally work with your engineering team or analytics team to like define the problem and then finally solve that.
No, definitely. I
Cool.
agree with you.
Let's go into the last section. Behavioral. Why do you think behavioral questions are asked in like PM interviews, and how do you think our interviewees should prepare for it?
Yeah, probably this is one other popular rounds in any interviews. I mean, I know Amazon does a lot of behavioral interviewing around their leadership principles. So behavioral, because I mean, to take a step back before going into very details. I mean, as a PM, you work with so many stakeholders. So you have to be very collaborative. You have to earn trust with stakeholders. You have to always be open-minded. I mean, there are many other, but I would say these are the three things that you do to be really good at when you work with so many folks. So what they're primarily testing in this round is, I mean, how you would respond in a particular situation. For instance, let's take an example, right? I mean, tell me about a time you had a difficult interaction with customer, which probably is very possible when you're doing your customer interviews. So the interview is primarily basically testing out, oh, what was the situation and what you did and what was the outcome. So essentially, I mean, one of the popular ways to prepare for this round is using the STAR method, which is pretty popular. That is, what is the specific situation? What is the task? And what are the actions you took during that situation? And what was the outcome, which is our result? So I would highly encourage people to, I mean, craft, examples around this. Company values or leadership principles. I mean, depending on the company that you're interviewing, and write in this format, so it's very structured, and people also understand when you talk during the interviews. You are basically using a structure at the same time using a lot of these kind of traits, the being open-minded, earning trust, and all that stuff. So I would say these are some of the important aspects of that. I mean, what about you, Funny? I'm sure you have given a lot interviews as well.
Yep, I totally agree, right? The one of the prominent things that I heard in like product manager role is influencing without authority,
Yes.
because there might not be anyone who might be reporting to you directly, but you will have to influence them to get the stuff done. Because as a product manager, you're not coding, you're not building dashboards, you're not creating designs, or you are not probably taking the product to the market. It might be your operations team who's doing that, but you need to work with all of them, set a direction, give a strategy, give a detailed roadmap, convince that this is the right thing to do, work with them to build it. And if there is a gap there, you need to make sure they understand it and build it. And all of them, or like many of them, might be like way more experienced than you or way more smarter than you. So, how do you convince them to do this? And that's what the interviewer is trying to test from a behavioral question, like you were mentioning, right? Tell me about a situation where you had to deal with a difficult coworker, or tell me about a situation where you were having a point of view but your engineering team thinks the other way, or tell me about a situation where you wanted to prioritize something but you couldn't because of staffing needs. So these are all the situations that actually happens for a product manager, probably on a daily basis. So the interviewer is trying to understand how you would navigate through these situations given the circumstances. And you should be like very composed during the interview process and tell clearly your thought process on what you did. And like you explained, right, you can take any format. And when I was like doing my interviews during my MBA, right, one of the things that somehow I used to think about is, hey, can I actually follow that star format like you're telling? Because the interviewer might be thinking, okay, why is this guy following a format? But the interviewer is not at all thinking about a format. You can pick anything. You can literally tell the interviewer to say, hey, I'll follow the star format for to answer this question. But what they're looking for is your thought process.
Yes. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, the format is just to craft your story, but when you are telling, it needs to be more like a conversation rather than that you're telling something like in a bullet point. So this is a situation, this is a task. So it's very important. Otherwise, it will be like very scripted. So for any, candidates out there, I would highly uh, treat this as a conversation and just use that to just structure your answer rather than specifically stating all that.
That's true. Cool. Srinath, probably let's end our podcast with this question, right? If there are two things that you want our interviewee to take away from this podcast, what would those be?
So from two things, I mean, there are a ton that I could say, but if I want to nail it down to two, I would say as a product manager, you have to be a very good listener, understand the problem, especially during interviews. I mean, your questions can be very specific, or sometimes it can be very open-minded, open-ended as well. Asking those clarifying questions, stating your assumptions, and all that stuff can only happen as long as you're a good listener. So it's very important to be a very good listener right through the interviews. And the second thing, I would say, as a PM, always show that you have great collaborative skills, or you can earn trust with stakeholders. You're very open-minded when you're building solutions, because during PM interviews, interviewers expect that you are, I mean, very good person and you are a very team player to work with. So, long story short, I would say these two is probably the most important ones.
Got it. Yeah, on my end, what I could think of is, I think the very first one is being customer centric. So any question that you answer in the interview, point it to a customer. So as a product manager, one of the most prominent things is to understand your customer, or understand who you're building it for. And if you can connect that to everything, that's the gold mine what the interviewer is looking for. And the second one, probably, like you mentioned, is have a conversation. At the end of the day, what is an interview? An interview is you, as an interviewee, you're trying to convince someone to tell that you are the best candidate for that role. So at the end of the day, if you have an awesome conversation with that interviewer, that's what the interviewer will remember. Have fun during the conversation, make some jokes and have a nice conversation, and make sure that person remembers you by the end of the conversation. If you can make that happen, you will definitely succeed in that.
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense.
Awesome. That brings us to the end. For anyone who's watching, thank you so much. And if you like it, please like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your comments in the comment section as well. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.